Can you see me at all?
Just your legs. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Niner Faithful. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone is having a legendary week. If y'all surprised that it's not Jaymie and Jason, Jaymie will be joining me shortly. And Jason is on assignment this week. Would help if I grab my microphone. I always forget to bring my mic up to my face. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and go over the Niners news of the week. But before we go ahead and do that, we got to remind everybody to stay tuned to the end of the show to get a special coupon code for 10% off of all For the Faithful by the Faithful Season 2 apparel, exclusively available at ninerfaithfulradio.com/shop. You can get your And the Quest for 6 t-shirts. Also officially shown on the Niners website. You can get your Kittle t-shirts. I ain't gonna lie, that kind of was like a highlight of my life, seeing my t-shirt on the Niners website. But anyway, also make sure you go to Niner Faithful or go use our affiliate code to save 10% off by going to shop49ers.com through our affiliate code. Link will be in the description of the show or podcast. So help out Niner Faithful Radio by using our affiliate link. Go to cgiant.com, use the promo code Niner Faithful Radio to save on all your theater, concert, and sporting event tickets, as well as help out the show. Make sure you follow us on social media at Niner Faithful Radio on Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr, and at Niner Faithful R on Twitter. And make sure you go to ninerfaithfulradio.com/subscribe to see everywhere you can subscribe to the show, and also catch our game day shows. We got our pregame with yours truly coming at 4 p.m. Jason will do the halftime show at halftime, and Brian will be filling in for Jaymie this week at 9 p.m. for our post-game show. Ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, faithful of all ages, let's get the show
They are at the 44-yard line of the Chargers. Taylor out to the left side, and Ricky Waters to the right. And a play fake. Young goes deep middle. He's got Jerry Rice. Touchdown 49ers! First touchdown of the game comes after only a minute and 24 seconds. 44 yards. Touchdown pass to Rice. He sets another record. How can they leave Jerry on something like that?
All right, and we're back. So we're obviously going to start this week with the obvious news this week. The clip that went viral of Jimmy apparently, obviously talking about Kyle Shanahan saying, "All your plays suck, man." We'll go ahead and play the clips. There's one from Kyle, and then there's two from Jimmy. Oh, actually, Jaymie just hopped on, so let's say what's cracking to Jaymie. What's up, love? How you doing?
Hey, sorry, running a few minutes late. Just got home. So, how you doing?
I'm legendary. You know, any day you wake up a 5-time champion, it's a legendary day. Anyway, I was just gonna go ahead and play the clips that we have real fast, just from Kyle and Jimmy both speaking about the viral clip, and then we'll go ahead and give our opinions on that.
It is with one of my friends. I mean, we are very, as me and Jimmy are around each other every single day, so there's not any awkwardness from us or anything that's kept from each other. I don't know the clip you're talking about. I got it on my notes before this press conference, but I'm not a very good lip reader, but I probably won't watch it.
I've heard about this clip. Actually, yeah, we were talking about it yesterday. I don't know. I can't read lips. I'm sure I've said a lot worse things on the field than that, so I'm glad they caught that rather than something else. But I'm not sure exactly what I was saying, but it is what it is. No, yeah, I mean, you say a lot of things in the heat of battle that I hope people don't hear. But no, me and Kyle are cool. We really are. We've been through, a lot of different types of seasons, this being no different, but we're early on in the season still. So we got to, as a team, find our identity. Me and Kyle obviously just keep working and getting on the same page more and more, but we've been through this before, and it's a long process.
I mean, the first thing I got out of that is Jimmy didn't deny it. I mean, he did say, I don't know what I said, but it wasn't like, oh, no, I would never speak, about Kyle like that and everything like that. Personally, I think I think it's kind of funny because how much shit do you really think players talk about coaches or each other or other players on the field that you just simply don't catch? I mean, literally, it was one dude. If this one dude happened to, look down to grab his cup to take a sip of beer, nobody would even know that Jimmy ever said this. So I personally think people are blowing this up a little bit too much, and I think that they're trying to fit in a narrative. I don't know how you personally felt about it, Jimmy.
So I saw this. Do I think Jimmy gets frustrated with Kyle at times? Of course. Do I think Kyle gets frustrated with Jimmy? Yeah. I think that's just natural. Do I think it could be do I think it's people trying to make it fit the narrative of like discourse and everything? Yeah. I am terrible at reading lips, so I don't know if that's what he said. I know there's been some talk on Twitter. I saw a tweet from somebody earlier, either today or yesterday, where they're trying to see if Jimmy was lying in the press conference about whatever this is. Like if he was like trying to play it off, and he actually did say it, but he did, like you said, he didn't deny it. And he
essentially said, you know what? Go ahead.
Because there's probably this there. Because something that stuck with me since the beginning of the season is when Jimmy came in against the Seahawks, and Jimmy says, I got to just kind of go out there and throw the ball. Like, it felt like 2017 Jimmy. And we haven't seen that Jimmy since that year, since Kyle kind of gave him a very brief playbook. And I think there's like...
very watered down.
Yeah, so like there's this like... There's probably this level of frustration that Jimmy can't improvise as much as he wants to. So I don't know. I think it's there's some truth to it, but I also think it's blown way out of proportion at some points for narrative.
I mean, what essentially Jimmy said is, yeah, I say a lot of shit when I'm on the field. That's how I personally took it, and look, I mean, I will say this, and for those who are sensitive ears, cover it up. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but there's a clip of Juwan Jennings getting into it with Diggs when we played the Sheepcocks in there, and I think it was Diggs ended up throwing Juwan Jennings on the ground, and it was very Juwan Jennings getting out of the scene. And I don't care what anybody says, I'm not the world's greatest lip reader either, but I clearly saw Juwan Jennings saying bitch ass nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like you clearly read his lips and he goes bitch ass nigga, because he's on Tyler sideline talking shit, and so he says bitch ass nigga. Like that one I read those. I remember Cap got flined. It was in 2014. I don't remember the game, but I want to say it might have been the opening week against the Bears, the first game at Levi's, where Cap got a flag thrown for saying nigga get the fuck off me. I have people that I've spoken to former Niners that have told me for a fact that's what happened. Cap said nigga get the fuck off me, because I think they were tackling there or something. So there's a lot of things said on a football field.
Yeah.
Haberman and Middlecoff brought up an interesting point in the fact that we don't know what's said in meetings. And I think it's very clear that the relationship between Shanahan and Jimmy isn't kumbaya. He isn't infatuated with Jimmy or anything, or we wouldn't have traded 3 first-round picks to get Trey Lance. I think that's quite clear. I think people are kind of sometimes forgetting, and not fully appreciate the fact of like, look, Kyle, it was the best decision for the Niners to bring Jimmy back in hindsight, because obviously, we know it'd be the Brock Purdy show. But I think that if you held a gun to Kyle's head, he probably would prefer Jimmy not to be on this team. He couldn't. It would have been malpractice not to get Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup if that was a viable option. Because yes, he is the best backup in the league. I believe that when healthy, when right. And now I did say a lot in my emotions after the Denver game that I put like clearly Jimmy. This is what you see when you get a quarterback who hadn't really picked up a football since January. Jimmy clearly looked like a football player who hadn't practiced in anything like that. I ultimately put that on Kyle because why did you allow our backup quarterback to be a quarterback that hadn't essentially really touched the football before, the week before since January in the NFC Championship? I ultimately kind of put that on Kyle. And now I don't blame him the way it worked out. Like, we're going to keep 4 quarterbacks, and obviously we couldn't expose Brock Purdy, who I think could develop into a pretty nice backup. So anyway, I do think it's overblown. But Haberman and Milcom brought up the point where, for all we know, Kyle told Jimmy, hey, you're going to throw the ball here. It's going to be open. When you drop back, throw the ball. We don't know that. Yeah. It's very easy to, and I still put the safety on Jimmy because Kyle came out and said, hey, look, the pick and the safety were bad play calls on my part. Cool. Awesome, Kyle. That's a different issue. We always hear about Kyle saying how he put Jimmy in a bad position. Well, over the last course since he's been here in 2017, why do you continuously put him in these bad positions? That's a different discussion. But my thing about it is, look, regardless of bad play call, whatever it is, Jimmy as a veteran quarterback can't step out of balance right. Like that's basic football 101. Field awareness. Yeah. So that has nothing to do with it being a bad, and I understand pressure in your face and all those things, but that's just awareness. And if Jimmy took the sack or just said, hey, I threw it at the dirt, threw it at the player's, feet and took an intentional grounding, which would have been a penalty because the penalty happened in the end zone, which honestly, I believe it was the same drive where Mike McGlinchey got a holding call, and I believe that's why we ultimately got backed up and got in the position of the safety. I honestly think that play should have been a safety because I thought it happened in the end zone. So I don't even think that Jimmy, if I'm thinking of the sequence of plays correctly, I don't even think that Jimmy's safety shouldn't even happen because Mike McGlinchey should have essentially caused the safety. So I want to move on. I don't want to spend all the whole show talking about a clip that we both kind of think is overblown. But I do think it's something interesting in the sense of, no, I don't believe Kyle and Jimmy have a kumbaya relationship. I don't. I don't think it's as kumbaya as the Niners would like you to think it is. I think essentially, I think Jimmy's on the Niners end of it. I think Jimmy's here because there's just no other viable backup option, of the same level of Jimmy Garoppolo. And Kyle's not a stupid man. He realizes that essentially minus 2017, mostly injuries at the quarterback position have derailed some seasons. Now, fine, maybe we wouldn't have been a playoff team in 2018, but probably wouldn't have been 4-12, which means we don't get Nick Bosa. So fine, but let's be real. Why was 2020 the year it was? You could point to Nick Bosa. Well, fine, that might be the reason why we weren't a championship caliber team, but we still had a top 5 defense. Well, ultimately, what cost us, the year we had in 2020 was quarterback play. Jimmy was hurt, missed half. I believe it was half the year, and we all saw that he came back before. And look at the Dolphins game, which Jimmy essentially cost us by those 3 picks, and just the way that Dolphins game went out. So I believe that from the Niners' point of view, Kyle said, I can't allow quarterback injuries to derail another season. Because then it's truly a wasted season because we don't need Jimmy to develop. Jimmy Garoppolo's on this team to compete and win. He's not on this team to develop a roster. There's no benefit in the Niners developing the roster this year.
It's true.
From Jimmy's side, ultimately, I think that this is probably the sense as far as knowing the offense, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, I don't think Jimmy was going to make the potential to make $16 million, which he will probably reach all those incentives in his contract. I don't think anybody else was going to pay him that much money to be a backup.
Probably not.
So I don't believe that it was I love the Niners, and the Niners were saying we love Jimmy. I think it was hey, this is the best option for both parties. And unless some fluke shit happens, I think Jimmy's gone next year. Could I see a scenario that Jimmy's still here in a backup role next year? We have to, because it was this year. And I think those questions that make Kyle nervous and want to put more into the backup quarterback position are still there. Even more so now, because now it's been even longer that Trey hasn't played a legit season. So there's still questions going into 2023 about the quarterback position. So I could definitely see a scenario with Jimmy Garoppolo still on this football team. I doubt it, but okay. So I just thought that we had to address that. We didn't get this clip because it was cut out of the press conference, but injuries for the game. TDP is out. Tyler Kroft is out. Trent Williams is out. Tavarius Moore, for some reason, I didn't ever hear anything about him, is out. Azeez Al-Shaair is out. Danny Gray is doubtful. Eric Armstead is questionable. Ross Dwelly is questionable. And Javon Kinlaw is questionable. We have a clip that I'll play here right now about Shanahan talking about Javon Kinlaw, and then we'll get into this because this is quite concerning.
Yeah, anytime someone has something, it's a concern. It's kept him out this week, so hopefully he'll be able to go. Just firing up on
here's another one.
Yeah.
And the thing's kind of out of nowhere. Javon Kinlaw, and let's be real, it's his surgically repaired knee.
It's his knee?
Yeah, it's his knee.
Is it?
It's his same knee that's been causing a problem. This is quite concerning. It's kept him out of practice this week. And the one thing I don't think that Javon Kinlaw hasn't been a game wrecker. He's not, we don't miss DeForest Buckner. Look, the Niners have lost that trade. I don't think there's nothing Javon Kinlaw can give us to make me think, yeah, it was smart trading DeForest Buckner for that pick and essentially drafting Javon Kinlaw as his replacement. No, there was a significant problem. It wasn't. Now, I personally don't think it was strictly just Javon. I think there was other factors, i.e. re-signing Jimmy Ward, re-signing Eric Armstead. The Niners made that decision because they're like, look, we can give these $20 million to DeForest Buckner, or we could give this $20 million to 2, 3, 4, 5 other players. And they just felt it was a better financial move to give 5 other players. So I said the moment we drafted Javon Kinlaw that he was always going to unfairly be compared to DeForest Buckner. That's just that's unfair to him. But ultimately, I have to say that the only way I'm bringing Javon Kinlaw back next year is on a 1-year prove-it deal.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to pay Javon Kinlaw this offseason, I tip my cap and say, go get your bag, Javon.
Yeah. The thing that I think we didn't appreciate about DeForest when he was here is he didn't miss a lot of games. He didn't get injured.
He didn't miss
for a lot. Yeah. So he was very reliable. And Kinlaw has already missed a bunch of times because of his knee. And I think it's always going to kind of affect him throughout his career just because of the nature of that injury, And so, would it be nice to still have DeForest on our team, of course. But like you said, the Niners felt it was a better financial decision to trade Defoe and then sign the other players for the amount of money that they were going to give one player for for a couple more players. So it sucks, and you're right. He was always going to be unfairly compared to DeForest Buckner because he was very clearly drafted to replace him, and he does not have that reliability that DeForest had when he was here because of the injury.
Okay, so I'm doing the y'all have to excuse me. I'm doing some real quick math, real quick. Okay, so out of 36 possible regular season games, Javon Kinlaw has played in 21.
Out of 36?
Out of 36. He's played, so he's missed a total of 15 games.
Okay. So it's
essentially he's missed almost the whole entire season.
Okay.
Almost. Nearly entire season worth of games. I have not seen anything spectacular from his play besides the first play of the season. He gets that pressure against Justin Fields and everything like that, but he hasn't made the game. But I've always chalked Javon Kinlaw's game as being the type of game that you're really not going to notice what he does because he's essentially there to allow the other players to make team plays. Javon Kinlaw, the reason the Niners are going to appreciate Javon Kinlaw is because he allows Eric Armstead or whoever else is inside of him to do their thing. You know, I think that's Javon's game, you know, in there to be a run stuffer and everything like that, which he's done fine. But I think, and this is more pregame talk, but I think we're very much at a turning point of this season when you can very clearly see the injuries are starting to pile up. Like this is bad. Like I think it was Matt Mayoko that tweeted out a tweet that said the Niners don't even I practiced the other day that Niners didn't even have enough to fill out a 48 man game day roster. I mean, that's concerning and especially it's where their injuries are at. Now linebacker I'm a little less concerned about, but I'm really torn about how to feel about this week because obviously it's the Yams. I personally I don't like, we struggled to move the ball. Like, if we look at the microcosm of each game of those, at each 6 game winning streak we had against them, there are probably a couple games that 1 or 2 plays, you know, go the other way. And let's be real, the game should have been way more than 17-3 going into halftime last year. And I know that a lot of people have been pumping up Colton McKivitz this week. But let's not forget that he gave up a sack that essentially should have ended our season. He gave up a sack. The Yams get the ball back, and if the Yams get a first down, our season's done. Now our defense forces the punt. We go down to tie the game and win it in overtime. But Colton McKivitz essentially really should have cost us our season last year. So part of me thinks, hey, it's the Yams, and I don't think they crack some code. You know, I don't think all of a sudden it's, oh my God, we're going to never win a game again. I think it was some circumstances. I think a lot of it was Trent Williams essentially coming out this offseason saying, yeah, I should have not played. Colton would probably have been better on 2 angles at that point than I was on 1. So I think that had a circumstances of, Trent Williams was essentially playing on 1 leg. You know, other Jaquaski Tartt's drop pick. So though it's not like we've blown them out every game, but I have faith in the sense that we got Bobby Turner back, which we'll go ahead and talk about that here next or in a little bit. But and I'll give y'all a little sneak peek. Debo is going to be my player to watch, and you know, ultimately, we seen what Debo does against the Yams, and he'll definitely be motivated this year or this week. So I think until further notice, we have to call Javon Kinlaw a bust. And I hate to say that because the potential's there. The potential's there for him just to be a monster.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about 2020. So 2021, 2020, 2021, and now going into 2022. I mean, sure, we all remember how Jimmy Ward's career was. And then he had those few years where he didn't miss a snap. Eric Armstead, until last week, I believe this is the first time he's missed since 2017. So some of it is Buzzard's luck. But I remember Grant Cohn brought on a doctor on his podcast one time, and he broke down essentially what Javon Kinlaw's issue and why a lot of teams took him off their draft board, and both his knees got flagged as arthritic at the combine. Is he essentially said Javon Kinlaw is eventually going to have no cartilage in his knee.
Right.
So I think Javon Kinlaw is strictly just a Solomon Thomas player in the sense that you're going to get his rookie year out of him. You're going to get cheap labor out of him and everything like that. But he's not a player I'm struggling for a second contract with the Niners.
I'd be surprised if he stayed on the team.
Unless it's a very team-friendly one-year deal.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, I'm down just because, the team clearly thinks highly of him if they spend a first-round pick on him. And, you just don't want Javon Kinlaw going to another team and wrecking game plans, because how foolish do you look then? That's the type of thing that gets people fired. Next, we got Shanahan talking about Bobby Turner.
It's just helping in every way. I mean, Bobby is, he's been around a lot. I'll tell you, he's been around about 80 years of coaching. I think it's 45. But no, we got a great running back coach in Anthony. Anthony, who coached Bobby, so their relationship is great. They got a lot of love for each other, and I just like Bobby coming around and getting on everybody on every little detail the way he does. So it's not just the runners, it's the receivers, it's the quarterbacks, it's everybody, and I think everyone's glad to have Bobby in here.
Yeah, Kyle made a mistake. Anthony Lynn, but this has been a hot button topic. How much does Kyle Shanahan miss Mike McDaniel? Because let's be real, the run game, and I think
I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, go ahead. Speak.
So I was like Kyle Shanahan missing Mike McDaniel. I was listening to a different podcast earlier this week, and they were talking about how the Dolphins are starting off really hot right now, and how McDaniels is having pretty good success down in Miami, and one of the hosts mentioned how McDaniels was really the only one who would look at the plays coming up, and he would see if he would try to make Shanahan budge on something. I don't think this play is going to work. Can we tweak it? Can we do something like this? Can we call this kind of play? Stuff like that. He wasn't afraid to kind of go against the grain, a little bit. Not all the time, but he would. And I feel like you could see that, because I feel like sometimes, especially with the running game, it's very stagnant. We get some runs, but I don't know.
Very predictable.
I just feel like we're getting a little too predictable. Even Shanahan mention, I don't know if it was this week or last week, that Debo's sweep plays that he runs, teams are figuring out how to defend now and stuff like that.
Well, that was going to happen.
Yeah. That was going to happen, but that's just an example of Shanahan not, I don't know. He just I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I feel like he is missing McDaniels, because I feel like he was able to rely on him a little bit more, and he felt comfortable letting him do certain things that he's not right now.
I think you brought up a big point, because I think a lot of Shanahan's problem is, my fiance, who's sitting behind me, by the way, hi baby, We were at the airport, and she's met him. And they came in when he was first hired as head coach. They came into her work to get their closing paper notarized for their house. So she met Kyle Shanahan. She said he's an asshole. She's like, he's an asshole. I was like, pretty much any person I know that met Kyle pretty much said he's an arrogant asshole who believes that he can't do very wrong. And the one thing I think Grant Cohn over exaggerates it, because I do think Kyle does take accountability. But I do hear him say a lot of essentially the play call was right. It just needs to be executed, which I take it as, look, my plays are good. My plays are fantastic. Even in that clip you heard is, I don't believe Jimmy said that. Why does Kyle believe Jimmy didn't say that? Because Kyle doesn't believe his plays suck. And part of our genius, part of the reason Kyle Shanahan is our head coach has got us to the point, and this is one of the things that frustrate me the most about the fire Kyle, is, first of all, who are you going to bring in?
Exactly.
Second of all, I feel so frustrated because people forget, like, do you know where this franchise was? Do you remember where this franchise was after we fired Jim Harbaugh? Like, do people forget what it was like in 2015 and 2016?
We made it.
I believe, and
we made it to the Super Bowl in the 2019-2020 season. We've made it to the NFC Championship twice since Kyle's been here.
We've seen it work.
And we've been in the playoffs the last, how many years since he's been here? 4 years at least. So
let's break down the Shanahan. Let's break down the Shanahan regime. Okay, 2017 clearly needed to gut the roster, rebuild the roster, establish the culture.
And we all understood that. That was going to be a rebuild year.
That was fine. Did we think we were going to start off? Did we think we were going to start 0-8 like we did? No, but it was clear. And even towards the end of the season, with us going on the 5-game winning streak, Jimmy comes here. You saw, obviously the team looked a lot better. And I remember, I think we might have set an NFL record. It was something like we lost the first 5 games by a total of 6 points, or it's an average of 2 points. It was some type of NFL record where we were losing games close, which ultimately
was close. I remember that. I remember being so frustrated.
Because what that told me was the gap between us and whatever teams we weren't playing weren't that high. Just ultimately what happened is the teams we were playing I remember specifically a game in 2018 that we lost against the Giants. I want to say it was a last second or, final drive type of game. And I remember sitting in the end zone that they scored the winning points. I think it was a touchdown by Odell Beckham. And I remember standing in the end zone and waiting for the stadium to clear. And I told myself, I said, you know what? I took off my Niner Faithful hat and was just an observer of football. And I had to put money on who was going to win, what was going to happen during this drive. When I put my money on Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard, whoever it was at the time, Marquise Goodwin and maybe Matt Breida, I think might have been our running back, or Saquon Barkley, Eli Manning, and Odell Beckham. I'm going to put my money that Odell Beckham, Eli Manning, and Saquon Barkley are going to get the job done versus CJ Beathard / Nick Mullins, insert running back, and Marquise Goodwin. So 27, but you saw that the gap wasn't there. Okay, 2018, Jimmy gets hurt. Clearly, you could see the rest of the team wasn't there. But, we draft Fred Warner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 2019, literally best team in the league. You'll never convince me that if we had to play the Chiefs again, that we don't win that Super Bowl. 2020, I specifically remember doing a show in the 2020 offseason where people were saying, why do you believe in the revenge tour? And I was like, because if you list our starters going into 2020, I think there was only Defoe and one other player. Oh, Joe Staley. It was Defoe and Joe Staley. Were the only 2 players out of the starting lineup that we were replacing, which honestly, let's be real, we upgraded from Joe Staley.
Yeah, we did.
So at the time, going into the season, the only roster spot that we had seen from a team that just was in the Super Bowl was Defoe. Every other starter was the same. How could you not believe that team was going to compete when we literally just watched them be 7 minutes away from winning a championship?
Mm-hmm.
Then what happened? Those players that you started listing of those starters in the Super Bowl were gone. Nick Bosa missed time. Jimmy missed time. Raheem missed time. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, cool. 2021. Yeah, started off slow, blah, blah, blah. What happened? But ultimately, what happened? We went into the fourth quarter with the 10-point lead, and I don't believe that if you gave every faithful truth serum, I don't believe that there was any faithful on this planet that believed that we weren't going to the Super Bowl going into the fourth quarter with a 10-point lead against the Yams, a team that we just watched us win 6 in a row against.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell me? That doesn't tell me that there's a problem with the coaching. That tells me that, especially versus Harbaugh, when it's like, look, they built this roster. So clearly what they're doing is making us a competitive team.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we wanted.
So I don't see who are you going to bring in that, like Sean Payton? Okay, so Sean Payton, what does Sean Payton feel about Trey Lance? Because you're not going to be in it would be malpractice for the Niners to fire Kyle Shanahan and then bring in a coach that doesn't believe in Trey Lance. That would be horrible running of a franchise.
Because if
it would lead me to a bigger concern, which is ultimately Jed didn't learn from his lesson was firing Harbaugh, which is you can't just bring in any coach and expect to win.
Mm-hmm.
I told my fiance before. Go
ahead. I was just gonna say, people don't realize that normally, like the coach and the quarterback, the coach has to believe in the quarterback, So like we can't just bring in it's a whole thing. If you bring in a new coach, it's a big freaking deal. It's just like,
hey, I'm a high sought-after coach.
Might want to gut a lot of stuff. They might want to start over. They might find that easier. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I don't know. It's a whole thing.
I don't believe that I would hope we would hire a coach that would do that, just because it's like, so you want to gut a roster that was just in the NFC Championship game? No, that's
they probably
my ultimate thing is okay.
But I'm just saying, like,
so Jamie. So you work at Domino's, right? So you're the top pizza maker at Domino's, right? Okay, or you're the assistant manager. You're the assistant manager at Domino's, right?
Okay.
Okay, so you're the assistant manager at Domino's, and all the Domino's in your district want you. They want Jamie to become their new store manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to go to a store where the district manager just fired the store manager that, let's say, came in second place 2 out of the last 3 years? Came in second place of store of the year. So this team was second place of store of the year 1 year. Are you going to want to go to that place if you're a top tier? No, you're not. When you have options, right? No. When you ultimately have options, you're not going to want to deal with that. And I think people forget what Jed York's reputation was when he fired Harbaugh. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to turn around and fire another coach that, like, do I think Kyle has too much power? Jason and I talked about this on Tuesday's show. Do I believe Kyle has too much power? Yes. Because if you tell me that Bill Walsh had a offensive coordinator, well, who the fuck is Kyle Shanahan compared to Bill Walsh? Because let's not be real. I believe Kyle is an offensive genius, but he isn't an innovator. He isn't changing football like Bill Walsh did. Bill Walsh invented the modern NFL, essentially.
You want to know what I think it is?
He had an offensive coordinator. Okay, like Bill Walsh, one of the greatest offensive mind in the history of the NFL, had an offensive coordinator. Had people telling him, "Hey, Bill, we shouldn't do this." And ultimately, if I do believe that there's a downfall that allows the Lynchahan regime not to succeed, I think that's ultimately going to be it.
Yeah. You want to know what I think it is?
Generally,
I think it's
coaches who have. Go ahead.
I think it could be two things. One, since Kyle is head coach, he does not have, he still does a lot. Like, he's obviously still kind of follows place and everything. He might just not have as much time to put into it like he used to when he was regarded as an offensive genius when he was in a coordinator position, because he was able to
hire
just
offensive coordinator.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to say. He has too much on his plate.
Yeah.
He needs to have somebody to help him. And I think that's the thing. And he doesn't want to do that. And I get that. But he needs to. I don't know. I feel like he needs to.
I personally think so. We could sit here in 2022 and we could say some obvious things. There's always been a rumor that when Jed York fired Harbaugh, that ultimately he wanted to bring in Mike Shanahan as head coach, hire Kyle as OC, and then eventually give Kyle the job when Mike Shanahan was ready to retire.
Okay.
I believe that. I believe Jed York's had his eye on Kyle Shanahan. Yeah.
For a while.
Since 2014. For a while. It seemed to me that Kyle, he came out and said as much. Kyle was not coming here. Kyle didn't want to come here. He said, I want a place with an established quarterback, blah, 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 blah. And essentially, because the Niners were willing to overpay, the Niners were willing to give him all this power. The Niners were willing to give him a 6-year contract, and do these things, let him hire his own GM, give him final say in the roster and do all these things. That's why Kyle Shanahan came here. Awesome. I think it'll ultimately be the best hire that Jed's made. And probably one of at least the third or fourth best coaching hire we make in team history. You could make an argument about Harbaugh, being number one, but obviously Bill Walsh and George Seifert are 1 and 2. So I fully agree with you, Jamie. The problem is the only person in the organization that can force Kyle to do that is Jed York, and he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So I've always told people, do I really go ahead.
It's just Kyle beating himself, It's just him.
Yeah.
Just not. It's just he's in his own way, So, yeah, and I don't think Jed would do. I don't think anybody's going to make him do it. So
I don't.
I agree with you.
I ultimately don't, because I feel that Kyle's cursed with his own success. He really is. So I want to get to one last clip here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this show. Okay. This is Kyle Shanahan speaking on the, I guess it was called the Game Changer chain or whatever, but as most faithful know, the Debo chain, the chain that everybody knows wears and flexes and everything. And this is actually kind of an interesting little quote.
I think I've answered this. I was not a big fan of the chain. I mean, I think anything gimmicky and college-like is kind of lame to me, but Jason Verrett got it for us, and he's like as cool of the guys I know. So, and the players thought it was cool. So I didn't tell him no or anything, but I was really hoping we didn't use it in the wrong way, because I think we're more professional than that. But the time that he did choose it, I can't lie, it didn't come off that bad. So I've liked their decision making on it. I don't know if it's gone. I hope it is. But I trust those guys to handle it right, and they haven't let me down so far.
So I thought that was an interesting clip, because it shows ultimately why I think we're good with Kyle Shanahan, is that I think if he's Bill Belichick, he says no. Because clearly Kyle, he said it, I'm not a fan of it. I think it's collegey and gimmicky and lame. The thing I hate the most, and I'm not a get along off my lawn when it comes to football celebrations. Dude, I grew up majority of my life with T.O. I have a T.O. jersey. either hanging in my closet right now or in my storage unit. Okay. I remember very distinctly every time we played football and PE during the football season that anytime I scored a touchdown, I did whatever the touchdown celebration TO did that week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was me. So I'm not but I hate when we run to the end zone after, picks and fumbles and stuff like that. That just gives me flashbacks to the Super Bowl. But ultimately, this is why I wanted to wrap up this week of news and everything by saying that there's been a lot of, fire Kyle and Kyle's the problem. And ultimately, I do think Kyle Shanahan is his own worst enemy, as we pretty much both have said.
Mm-hmm.
But until he starts losing the locker room, until you start hearing players saying things, I don't think we have an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And right there, that shows me ultimately why Kyle is considered a player's coach. And
Yeah.
I think that was Harbaugh's best attribute. Let's be real. Jim Harbaugh wasn't an offensive genius. We just out physical teams. We were just bigger, stronger, badder, and more physical than you.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle's like that. Like we're a very physical football team. I mean, watch Trent Williams, watch Debo, watch Jimmy Ward. Watch Fred Ward. We're a very physical football team. But Kyle has the offensive where it's going to be like, look, people are going to get open in Kyle's scheme.
Right.
And this is why I want to step back from putting a lot of the play calling and that type of thing from Kyle, the blame on Kyle, because I distinctly remember one play, and my fiance might remember this, where the pass, not the one where they missed Debo right open for the touchdown, but the one that they connected, but it was a bad throw, and ultimately Debo fell down. When I saw that ball and I saw Debo catch it, I was jumping because I thought he was going to score.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like I think we all say that could be a touchdown. We know the Brandon Ayuk play that he missed for a touchdown. So to me, Jimmy makes that better throw. Jimmy doesn't miss Brandon Ayuk wide open. Things like that we're probably talking about a different ball game here.
Mm-hmm.
So is it Kyle's fault? Because to me, you have Kyle Shanahan, the personnel evaluator, and Kyle Shanahan, the play caller, play designer. Is Kyle Shanahan, the play caller, play designer, at fault that the player was open, but Jimmy either missed him or underthrew the pass or whatever? That's not Kyle Shanahan, the play caller, play designer's fault. That's Kyle Shanahan, the personnel, for allowing a quarterback who hadn't practiced all, but that's not Kyle Shanahan, the play caller.
Right.
Which I want to be gentle with Kyle, because I will say, yes, Jimmy Garoppolo was the best available backup for the Niners.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I would. But part of me, ultimately, where I go with the Jimmy decision and why I say, hey, you sit Jimmy till he's ready, is if this is going to be a lost season, I'd at least rather develop some Brock Purdy then. So if we're going to lose that game in Denver, regardless, that we were just destined to lose that game, I'd rather send Brock Purdy out there, because then at least we got some reps for our now backup, who, let's be real, a very, very high likelihood that Brock Purdy plays multiple games this year.
Probably.
If we look at Jimmy Garoppolo's history, he's going to miss some time this year. Brock Purdy is going to see some time under center. So in a game that Jimmy clearly wasn't ready for, and we were going to go in, would I rather see our backup quarterback, if we're going to eventually win the game? Would I have rather seen our backup quarterback get some development so that ultimately when he gets called upon, which if we're being optimistic, he will. It's not, oh yeah, welcome Brock Purdy, your first snaps in the NFL. By the way, you're either going against the Chiefs, the Yams again, Carolina, the Yams, Cardinal, welcome to the NFL, kid. So ultimately, I think Jimmy will be fine because I don't expect Jimmy to be that bad again in the sense that he's going to get more reps.
He probably
My
won't.
ultimate concern is my
I think
ultimate
part of this.
concern is
Go ahead. Sorry.
my ultimate concern with going forward and taking away this week is the cascading effect. Not how bad Jimmy looked, but losing Trent Williams. Now you're without Elijah
Mhm.
Mitchell. Now you're without Aziz Al-Shaair. Now you're, let's be real. Jeff Wilson Jr. isn't going to be, he isn't going to take every snap. Eventually, he's going to wear down.
Hmm.
So ultimately, I think bringing Bobby Turner is the best we can do because Mike McDaniels is not coming back to the Niners. That's not happening. I think we could guess that he's going to be a pretty successful coach.
Hmm.
So he's not coming. So I think this is the best because, yeah. And the dangerous part of coaches bringing in their own guys and surrounding themselves with people that Kyle's clearly worked with in Washington, Cleveland, et cetera, is because, yeah, he's worked with Daniel, McDaniels, Mike McDaniels since I think he said Tampa, either Tampa or Washington. Is you don't know how to function without him. Kyle's essentially never had to function without Mike McDaniel and Bobby Turner his whole coaching career because Bobby Turner coached with his dad. So it was a very, when Mike Shanahan retired, it was probably a very, hey Bobby, I kept you in the NFL all these years and everything. Go be with my son to help my son and guide my son. And so I think we'll be okay. I'm just worried of the cascading effects because on paper, fully healthy, yeah, I think we can manhandle the Yams. But does Aaron Donald over Colton McKivitz make me very, 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 very nervous? Yes.
Bad.
Do I see Jimmy Garoppolo getting planted in the ground? Because ultimately, people call Jimmy injury prone. Let's be real. Jimmy gets his ass whooped week in and week out because our offensive line is not the greatest pass protection. And Jimmy takes a lot of hit. How do you get a shoulder hit, Jamie? I don't know. Maybe getting constantly slammed into the ground on your shoulder. How do you get a shoulder hit? How did he get his thumb hurt? By the way he landed trying to protect his shoulder. Why? Because he got rocked. Because Michael Wilson blew a pass coverage. So that's ultimately my concern about this game. It's not that the Yams figured out some code or whatever like that. It's just the simple fact that Aaron Donald versus Colton McKivitz is a matchup that literally could wreck this game.
Aaron Donald is terrifying, and I worry about him every game we play against him, regardless of who's, because he is that good of a player, and he is the kind of player that could wreck your game. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I don't know. It's gonna be, with all those injuries that you listed, it's not great. It's not great at all, to be honest with you. I didn't realize we were that baked up. I knew we had some injuries, but it's I don't know. It's just the offensive line is gonna have the work cut out for them this game, and it's gonna be a little rough, I think.
The thing that worries me the most is ultimately, I remember going to my fiance at halftime and saying, what worries me is that Russell Wilson can make a play. He can. What ultimately did Russell Wilson do? Make two plays. That shuffle pass when he was essentially getting sacked, and that run on third down where he ran right up the gut that eventually got them in field goal on a touchdown drive that got them into the red zone, and eventually they scored. Those are the only two plays where I felt like, oh shit, and that's what I told my girl is two things concern me. The altitude in the second half, which is if we don't sustain drives and keep our defense off the field, they're going to wear down, which is ultimately what I think happened.
Mm-hmm.
And Russell Wilson can make a fluke play.
He did Russell Wilson things.
Let's be real. He looked. When I said after the game that's the best defensive performance I've seen live, I meant against Russell Wilson because he looked like shit.
Mm-hmm.
I remember every faithful. It seemed like every faithful in that stadium after every incomplete pass was just Wilson. And I mean, like, you don't know. I was about to cry. I was so JB. You know how much I hate that bitch ass nigga. I was so ready to celebrate, and you don't even know how like.
He did look terrible.
That's what
he looked terrible. Besides those couple of plays.
There's no business we have to lose that. Anyway, I don't want to rehash that. And we took away the big advantage because one of the things that I thought that we could win that game is eventually he's going to click and he's going to get it. He'll get in tune with his receivers, all that thing. But because we were playing him so early, I thought it might. I was nervous, but I thought it might look like the way it did after week 1 and week 2. Like, okay, he clearly hasn't figured it out. And I remember looking at a fan was, oh, your quarterback's just as shitty. I said, ours didn't have a training camp. What's y'all's excuse? Yeah. Ultimately, there's no reason for us to look. I don't blame Jimmy in the sense that he played like a quarterback that didn't have an offseason that was throwing on a sideline to trainers all training camp. So what concerns me is that same type of game plan. We can't do shit offensively. Defense is amazing. The Yams ain't going to put up, like, there was something like they're only averaging like 20.3 points a game or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the Yams are all of a sudden going to hang 35 on us. What worries me about this game is we can't do shit offensively because we just simply can't get anything going because Aaron Donald's wrecking our game plan and Bobby Wagner and Jalen Ramsey and all that are wrecking our game plan. And ultimately, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp make a play.
Yeah.
Because they're going to do that. Is it the point about it is it's going to make a play where it's 35-10 now and it doesn't really matter? Or is it going to be a play when it's a tie ball game and there's a minute 45 seconds left and they make a fluke play because Cooper Kupp's a good receiver and Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback and they just make a fluke play and now all of a sudden we lose the game by 3 points. That's very happy. Yeah. That's very capable because ultimately that's essentially what's happened both of our losses. We've let an inferior team stick around and they've made a play. Yep. So any final thoughts on this week's news, and then I'll let you go ahead and get up out of here. Bubby needs to get to bed, and we gotta watch some Stranger Things.
Yeah. I'll just echo what you said, just what you just last said. Our defense isn't the problem. We have a very good defense. They're gonna keep the Rams in check. It's our offense being able to score and us getting points on the board is the biggest problem, consistently. So we're just gonna have to see if the offense can figure it out. I hope they can. I don't know because I feel like that's their struggle every year. To be honest, our defense is always pretty solid, and our offense just doesn't click. And I think that's why in 2019 we did so well is because we were clicking more than normal. So.
Well, let's not forget the offense struggled in the beginning of the year. The offense under Kyle Shanahan's never started hot. And that's the only thing that I guess you could say, hey, you have to fire Kyle Shanahan. What's your reason? I would say for an offensive genius, ultimately, we got to we're going to win. And, yo, what's up, Niner Faithful? What up, my dude? What's up, Ben? How you doing? Ultimately, for offensive genius, the offense seems to always be the problem, and that would be my ultimate reason of if I hired to fire Kyle Shanahan. Yeah, that's what it would be. Is that hey, for offensive genius, offenses seem to be a problem a lot with this football team, or offensive struggles. The Super Bowl, the NFC Championship game last year, whatever. I will always put the Super Bowl on the defense because I say don't allow 21 unanswered points. Benjamin saying he's not a genius. But let's be real. None of that matters if Jimmy hits Emmanuel Sanders. I think the bigger problem was getting 21 unanswered point scoring on you and not getting off the field on 3rd down and 16. That's ultimately what I think the problem is. Not being able to sustain a drive in the NFC Championship game last year. So this is a game that if you want to be on positive, it seems like every year we're doom and gloom. We play the Yams, we beat them, and it turns the season around. We're back on Tuesday, all cheerful and everything like that. So that's ultimately why I have hope. Is that this happened last year? We were literally 3-5. We always point to the team was 3-5, and the season turned around. Well, the game 9 was Monday night against the Yams, and that's ultimately what turned our season around.
Okay.
Here we are, 1-2, and so yeah, I ultimately do expect this is. I'm nervous, but I do expect that this will be the turning point of the 2022 season, where there'll be multiple, but this will be the big one that ultimately will win the Super Bowl. And things were down. It's obviously you were only a few months old when this happened, but the famous Eagle game where Steve Young goes psycho on George Seifert on the sideline, and they have the old players only lock. I think this is ultimately going to be that game. If we go on and win the Super Bowl, we're going to circle that Yams game as the game. But all right, we'll go ahead and let you go, love. Jamie will not be live for the post game, but be back.
I'm going to be working most likely.
Yeah, so that's fine. Brian will do it. I'll do it. But we'll go ahead and see you next week. Back on the show. We're saying good morning, Niner Empire, just because we can't. Oh, how cute. So Jamie's got a fan. We're gonna come up with a better show. We're kind of thinking that right now, but good morning, Niner Empire.
I share, like I told Jason, he always asks me, "Do you have a name?" I'm like, my brain, I don't know. I'm terrible at coming up with names.
Well, I just I understand what y'all are saying in the sense that, yeah, good morning, Niner Empire doesn't work for a show that you're recording at 8:04 p.m. But the idea, of course, ultimately, let's be real. When we call this Good Morning Niner Empire, y'all weren't ever supposed to see the live recording. It was strictly going to be a podcast that would come out the next morning. So we'll come up with a show idea. All right, girly. Go ahead and enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you next Friday for next week. Good morning, Niner Empire.
Sounds good.
All right. We thank Jamie for joining her show. Seems kind of weird. Benefits of being the owner, you get to hijack somebody else's show. All right, y'all. We'll go ahead and get up out of here. But we're gonna go ahead and give you the promo code for this week's Temper Faithful by the Faithful Apparel. It is BLA. Make sure you use that promo code and save 10% off of all season 2 gear. Monday at 4 p.m. here on the West Coast for Niner Faithful Radio Live. Till then, please remember the San Francisco 49ers don't always lose a game, but when we do, we're still the best team in NFL history. Stay faithful, my friends. Go Niners.